Welcome to Scrum Masters Elite_UK, a place for calm reflections on Super Rugby Aupiki 2026. Subscribe to the channel to reflect and grow together.
Information about the upcoming 2026 Super Rugby Aupiki season comes with a fairly calm mindset, not overly excited, yet not indifferent. There is a familiar feeling that quietly emerges, like standing before a new season while still seeing clear traces of the previous one. Continuity, repetition, and just enough change to create hope. Thinking more deeply, I realize this is not just the story of a sports competition, but also a clear reflection of how people sustain growth while preserving identity. The first thing that caught my attention is that all four teams have retained a relatively stable core from the 2025 season. In a world where everything changes rapidly, this continuity brings a sense of reliability. I ask myself, in my own life, am I holding on to my core values? Or am I changing so quickly that I lose myself? The stability of these teams is not rigidity, but a foundation for growth. It makes me reconsider how sometimes I rush to change without fully understanding what truly needs to be preserved. Looking at Blues women, the reigning champions with back-to-back titles, I am not surprised they are still highly rated. 5 wins in 6 matches last season is not a coincidence, but the result of an effective system. Yet what makes me reflect is not their achievements, but how they continue to strengthen their squad, retaining key players while adding new talents like Ella Henderson and Amaranti Sititi. This highlights a clear principle: success is not an endpoint, but a state that must be continuously nurtured.
I once thought that after reaching a milestone, I could rest for a while. But seeing how a championship team continues to renew itself, I understand that if I stop, the gap between myself and others will quickly shrink, not because others suddenly become better, but because they never stop. This lesson is simple, yet difficult to apply in reality. Turning to Chiefs Manawa, I see a different story, one of persistence. 2 finals appearances in the first 3 seasons, yet not true dominance. This is the kind of journey many people, including myself, can relate to. Effort does not always bring immediate results, but the continued squad building with internationally experienced players like Justine McGregor, Manaya Nuku, and Shoshana Samanatafa shows they have not given up. One thing I realize from teams like Chiefs Manawa is that not winning yet does not mean failure. It is simply an unfinished phase. Seeing it this way makes me less harsh on myself when I don't achieve my goals. What matters is whether I keep moving forward. With Hurricanes Poua, the story revolves around experience and leadership. The addition of Renee Holmes, with nearly 30 international caps and close to 200 points scored, is not just a technical boost, but also a mental one. In any group, the presence of experienced individuals not only improves performance but also provides psychological stability.
This makes me wonder, in my environment, what role am I playing? Am I someone who needs guidance, or someone who can guide others? And if I am not yet experienced enough to lead, have I truly learned enough from those who came before me? The return of Aisha Letiga also brings another thought. Stability does not always come from keeping everything unchanged, but from knowing when to return to values that once worked. In life, I have explored different paths, but the new is not always better than the old. Knowing when to return is also a form of maturity. As for Matatū, I see transformation. From runners-up in 2025, they have not only retained a strong squad but also added intriguing players like Paris Lokatui, who transitioned from basketball to rugby, and Poppy Baxter from the U18 Sevens team. This makes me reflect on the concept of potential. We often evaluate people based on what they have done, but sometimes what matters more is what they can do in the future. Someone transitioning from another sport may lack experience but brings new skills and perspectives. It reminds me not to be limited by my past. What I have done does not define my entire identity. Reading about 33 debut players, I sense a surge of fresh energy. Those entering the competition for the first time carry expectations, anxiety, and a strong desire to prove themselves. I recall my own first times in various areas, that mix of excitement and fear. No matter the level, human emotions remain strikingly similar.
What I take from this is, never underestimate newcomers. In many cases, they are the ones who create breakthroughs. At the same time, they need a stable environment to grow. This is why the balance between experience and youth is so important. Hannah Porter's comments about balancing veterans and newcomers made me reflect deeply. This balance applies not only in sports but in any system, from companies to organizations to societies. Too many young people means lack of direction, too many experienced individuals means lack of innovation. In personal life, this is equally true. If I rely only on what I already know, I become rigid. But if I constantly change without a foundation, I become unstable. Finding the balance between these two is perhaps one of the hardest challenges. Looking more broadly, this season reflects a fundamental truth about human nature: we are always moving between two poles, stability and change. No one can live entirely in a fixed state, but no one can survive if everything is constantly changing. For fans, the 2026 season may bring excitement through new faces and familiar rivalries. But there is a deeper lesson: learn to appreciate both the past and the future. Familiar players bring a sense of connection, while new faces bring hope. For me, the clearest lesson is about persistence and adaptability. No path is entirely stable, but no change is completely random. Everything has its reason and takes time to show results. For people in general, this story reminds us that sustainable growth always comes from balance. Change is not always better, and keeping everything the same is not always safe. What matters is understanding where you are, what you need, and being willing to adjust when necessary.
When the season begins in June, there may be surprises, losses, and victories. But beyond all that, what matters most may not be who becomes champion, but how each team, and each individual within it, continues their journey. And thinking about that, I realize that I am also in a season of my own. There is no leaderboard, no audience, but there are still goals, challenges, and opportunities to grow. Perhaps what matters most is not where I stand, but whether I am moving forward.
Goodbye from Scrum Masters Elite_UK, a new season. Familiar rhythms and subtle changes. Stay true to your identity and keep moving forward. See you on the next journey.